Hey, what's up everybody? It's miraculously sunny today in Western New York. And I also know that Black Friday and all of the holiday deals are coming. So I thought today was the perfect day to finally give you a gear review of all the gear that I used on the PCT and if it worked and if it didn't work and if I'd recommend it or not. Special thanks to Heather, aka Mermaid Loves Mountains, for asking me some gear questions the other day and giving me the push that I needed to actually finally make this video. I am surrounded by my gear right now. I probably won't hit every single piece of gear that I use on the PCT, but I'm gonna try to hit at least most of it. So if I miss something and you have a question about if I liked it or not, feel free to let me know down in the comments. And I'll also put links to all of this gear down in the show notes. So if you wanna find something, that'll be an easy way to do it. Also, please pardon my voice today. I have a little bit of cold. I'm a little congested today, so please forgive me. All right, without further ado, let's get into the gear I used on the PCT and if it worked or if not. All right, let's start with the big three. All right, so I got a Z-Packs Plex Solo Light tent, brand new for this trek. And I've had a Z-Packs tent in the past, but this is their super ultra light version. This is their lightest one-person tent, the Plex Solo Light. And they made the material, the Dyneema, thinner. They made the guy lines thinner. They made the storm doors not completely overlap. Would I recommend this tent? Heck no. No, not at all. I definitely would not recommend this tent. This tent started falling apart pretty immediately. I got a hole in the floor within the first 2 weeks, even though I was being pretty careful about where to pitch my tent and not pitch it near cacti and things like that. Every single one of the main guy lines, the 6 main guy lines that you have to stake out to put the tent up, completely frayed and were about to snap. Not within the first 2 weeks, but in the desert, basically. So within the first 700 miles. The zippers completely busted. I ended up having to send this tent into Z-Packs to fix all of the issues. I will say that Z-Packs gave really great customer service. I was able to send this into them and they sent me a loaner tent to use in the meantime. I know that that doesn't always happen with gear brands, so I thought the customer service was actually phenomenal. So they sent me a loaner tent, which was the Z-Packs Altiplex. That's also a one-person tent, but it wasn't their ultralight version, so it wasn't. It was like the normal thickness of material, normal thickness of guy lines. It wasn't the ultra light version. And the Altiplex is for tall people, so it's taller this way and it's longer. And I actually loved the Altiplex. So while I would not recommend the Plex Solo Light, I would 100% recommend the Altiplex. And honestly, I really want that tent now. I ended up using it from Mount Shasta to the Canada border. And then I also used it for a few days on a long trail section hike afterwards. So I used that tent for over 1,000 miles and had zero issues with it. It was super easy to put up. It was really roomy for one person. This one, if it rains, it's really hard to not get wet on the inside because there's so little room. And if you move around at night at all, your sleeping pad is gonna like pop out the mesh and cause you to get rain in your tent. But the Altiplex had a ton of room in it. I just really like that tent. I'm gonna get it at some point. I was really sad that I had to swap back for this tent. I now have this one back. I really want the Altiplex, so thumbs down to this, but thumbs up to the Altiplex. Next up is my Western Mountaineering Pro Light sleeping bag. This is a 20-degree bag. It's down. I really prefer to use synthetic and not buy a lot of animal products, but I just run really cold, so down is something that I struggle with and I use. But this is supposed to be ethical down. They use goose feathers from meat birds. So it basically, the down is just a byproduct that would be thrown away otherwise if it wasn't being used. So I feel at least a little better about that. And I find this sleeping bag to be really toasty. I've had it for a few years now. I used it on the Colorado Trail as well as, some of my other backpacking trips. It held up really well. I just think for a 20-degree bag, it's really toasty and really comfortable, and I'm a big fan. I will say, so it's under 2 pounds, right? So it's an ultralight sleeping bag, so they got to cut corners somewhere, and so the foot box is really narrow at the bottom. I don't love that. I do wish it was wider, but for the weight, for the warmth, I think you can't beat it. So definitely recommend this sleeping bag if you're looking for a new one and you don't mind using down. Next up, my backpack. This is the Gossamer Gear Mariposa. It's a 60-liter backpack. However, liters are not always equal in terms of backpacks. They are not measured necessarily all in the same way for different brands. Some brands count the liters only what is the inside of the pack, and some, like Gossamer Gear, count the inside plus all the pockets. So this is a 60-liter backpack, but you might look at it and think like that's not as big as I would think it would be for 60 liters. If you look at Osprey, for example, those packs are gigantic because they only count the inside of the pack. But anyway, I've been using Mariposa for a few years now, and I have mixed feelings about this pack. I used to love it. I loved the old version of this pack. But in 2024, they remade the pack. They made it heavier, which I'm like, what the heck? I don't think it's as comfortable as the old pack. I don't think it carries weight as well as the old pack. So allegedly there were some issues with the old load lifter system, but these constantly come down. I don't know. They don't stay up the way they're supposed to. This is actually, I got a new pack last summer. I used it for maybe 100 miles and then brought it out on the PCT. And it immediately started falling apart. It wasn't durable whatsoever. The seams started coming apart. The mesh was just completely full of holes when I got this pack. I also got this in Mount Shasta. So I had the old pack from the beginning of the hike till Mount Shasta, which is about 1,600 miles. And just the whole pack was falling apart. Like, it was full of holes. The clasps were busted. Like, I was having to tie the pack together. It just wasn't durable at all. And the last Mariposa that I had, the old version, lasted me several years and a couple thousand miles. So I just wasn't very impressed with the changes that Gossamer Gear made to this pack. They changed the material on it, which they say they did because they're now using recycled material. I kind of suspect it was a move to save money, but who knows really. But also I will say that, like with Z-Packs, I did have a really good experience with their customer service. I had bought my pack directly through Gossamer Gear. I reached out, I let them know what had happened, and they sent me a brand new pack. So I thought that was amazing. Great customer service. Shows me they really care about their customers. I did hear about some people who bought Gossamer Gear packs from other vendors and Gossamer Gear would not help them. So if you are going to buy a Gossamer Gear pack, I recommend you buy it directly from Gossamer Gear. But I do think this pack is really comfortable, and that's why I've stuck with this pack. But I think that they definitely are having durability issues with this pack, so I don't love that. I don't know if I can recommend it for a long through hike. I do also have another Gossamer Gear pack that's a day pack that I really like and really find comfortable as well, but obviously durability is less of an issue on a day hike than a long through hike. And I guess also if you're just using this for weekend backpacks and stuff, like, great pack, but for something long, I just don't see the evidence that it's going to hold up for the entire hike. So the other complaint I have about this pack is that it's not waterproof, and the old version wasn't waterproof either, but I really felt like with the old version, like I said, it was a different material, and my stuff inside would only get wet if I was caught in the pouring rain. Like, if it was just a little bit of a drizzle or some sprinkling, I wouldn't get wet at all on the inside. And now with this pack, it seems like if there's any rain whatsoever, the stuff on the inside is getting wet. So yeah, I just don't think I can recommend this pack. Next up, my sleeping pad. This is the Nemo Tensor. I freaking love this sleeping pad. This is the insulated version, so it adds some warmth. You know, you lose a lot of heat when you're sleeping on the ground, so this picks you up off the ground. The higher the R value, the more kind of heat protection there is there, so you're not losing heat to the ground. I did go through 2 of these. I brought my old one on the PCT with me that I had for a few years. I used it on the Colorado Trail in 2022 and every backpacking trip I've been on since then. And I did have to get a new one because I didn't notice that I had dragged a twig into my tent and it stabbed it through my sleeping pad. Super sad. I was able to patch it, but I was about to head into the High Sierra and I just didn't want to head into the High Sierra with a pad that might not hold up. So I did get a new one. Shout out to my friends Stephanie and Andrew for bringing me one out on the trail. You guys are awesome. And this one held up until the end of the trail. No issues. So this is the most comfortable sleeping pad I've ever had. I've been using the Nemo Tensor for years. I love it. I get amazing sleep out on the trail. So definitely highly recommend. Next up, my trekking poles. These are the Alpine Carbon Cork women's trekking poles from Black Diamond. I have been using a version of this trekking pole also for a few years. I lost a pair, that's why I had to get a new one, but I really like these poles. I think the cork handles are really comfortable. They're really lightweight. They're made of carbon fiber. I did have to replace the tips though. When I got to Kennedy Meadows South, they completely became little nubs like this one. And so I'm gonna have to replace this one again. But that's easy enough to do. You just boil them off, pull them off, and put a new pair on and hammer them in. It's not really that tough. I did have to boil the water for like half an hour though, which was kind of extreme. My only tip is that if you get these trekking poles, you make sure that you get an Allen wrench. In order to tighten these, you have to use a tiny little Allen wrench. I forget what size it is, but you can look it up pretty easily. And I did have to do that occasionally. I knew, because I've been using these for a while, that I needed to do that, but I didn't do that on the JMT and I had huge issues. It's not a big deal if you know in advance, but just make sure that you bring that tiny little Allen wrench to tighten those, because every now and again they'll start collapsing on their own and then you know you got to tighten them. So, but yeah, I really like these. I plan to keep on using them. If I say lost these, knock on wood, don't plan to do that, then I would probably buy the same pair because I just really like them and find them to be really comfy. Next up, my fanny pack from Town Shirt. I freaking love this fanny pack. I did go through a couple of these because the zippers kept breaking. Dust, the California dust is real and it kills zippers. Like, it was all of my zippers on everything were just completely busted because of the California dust. So I did have to get a couple of replacements, but I absolutely freaking love this fanny pack. I would put things in there like my chapstick, my phone, anything that I wanted really easy access to, I would put in this. And it's pretty waterproof. Like, I got caught in a huge storm and my headphones were in here and I forgot to put them in like a plastic bag and they stayed completely dry and didn't bust at all. And I was so happy because I definitely would have put them in a plastic bag if I'd thought about it. But yeah, I totally forgot and they were totally fine. Everything in here stayed dry and this is really comfortable. I do wish it was a tiny bit bigger, but no worries on that. But yeah, it's really comfy and it's got this side clip so it's not like digging into your backpack, and it comes in fun prints and colors. And I also just think that Town Shirt is an awesome brand. The guy who runs it is named Pickle and he's a thru hiker and he's just an awesome guy and they give great customer service. So highly recommend the fanny pack. Next up is my pajamas. These are base layers from Wild Rye. Wild Rye is a women-owned outdoor apparel company based in Idaho. And full disclosure, I did get these for free from the brand. They asked me if I wanted to try them out. I'd been eyeing Wild Rye for a while, but you know, it's always tough to decide if you want to spend your money on a new brand that you haven't used before. But I was like, heck yeah, send me some base layers, would love to try them out. They didn't even know I was going to hike the PCT. And I was like, well, I got these new base layers, might as well take them on the PCT. And I absolutely loved these. They're super warm, super cozy, super comfy. And you know, the waistband didn't dig in or anything like that. I think the print's really fun and cute. This is last year's version, so they have new prints now, but I'd highly recommend them. Really like these base layers. Next up, my Astroman sun hoodie from Outdoor Research. So this is they have sun hoodies in, you know, different weights, and the way they measure how sun protected it is called the UPF, kind of like SPF. And this is their higher up one. A lot of people I saw had the Echo hoodie, which is what I used on the JMT, but this is more sun protection. This is UPF of 50. And this is my favorite sun shirt that I've ever owned. I did have to buy a new one up in Washington because one of the shoulders completely tore out. Pickles actually sewed it for me, and that lasted about half a day. So I had to get a new one because I was getting rubbing on my shoulder from my backpack. But otherwise, it lasted very well. I did have it until Washington, and the material is pretty thin, so I'm just impressed it lasted as long as it did. But it's super comfy. I really felt like it kept the sun off of me. It's a breezy shirt, like just very comfy, and definitely did the job. So highly recommend that one. I'm a Colorado gal, so you know I had to bring my Melanzana gridded fleece hoodie. I love this hoodie. It's so comfy and so warm. It's an incredible mid-layer. Big fan. I will say, though, I saw a ton of people with Alpha Direct fleece hoodies or fleece sweatshirts, and I am really curious about Alpha Direct. It's a pretty thin material that is supposed to be super warm, and especially if you combine it with a wind layer. And it looks a whole lot lighter than my Melly, so I will say I am curious about that. But having not really known anything about Alpha Direct going in, I was very, very happy with my Melly fleece. Next up, and not pictured, is my Gossamer Gear sun umbrella. This is one of the first times that I have used a sun umbrella on a backpacking trip. I've used them on shorter ones before, but this was my first long one, and I loved having a sun umbrella. I wouldn't say I was thrilled with Gossamer Gear's sun umbrella particularly because it was really flimsy. It started breaking pretty early on in the desert. It just wasn't, you know, they're cutting weight. It's very lightweight, and it just every time it would hit some brush, it would break a little bit. But my big issue with the Gossamer Gear sun umbrella is that the stem of the umbrella, it doesn't, you can't like fold it in half or anything to move it in different directions. So placing it exactly where you want it to be with their hands-free setup, it was really tough. And the sun would move, and then you'd have to redo it, and it was just kind of a pain in the butt. And I wish that it had a stem that folds. I don't know how to say. Sorry, I don't know if it's called the stem of the umbrella, but you get what I'm talking about. So I would definitely want to bring a sun umbrella again, but I would maybe look around and see if there are more durable sun umbrellas or ones that are easier to adjust. I don't know if one exists, but if so, let the people know down in the comments. And I actually got rid of my sun umbrella at Kennedy Meadow South before I went to the High Sierra. Not because I didn't want it anymore, but because I had to bring in my ice axe and bear can and spikes, and I just was like, I don't have room for this anymore, and I also just need to drop some weight, so I got rid of it. And it was falling apart, so it didn't feel like a loss, but I did miss the sun umbrella after that, and I did wish that I had one. Okay, my rain gear. I started with a pair of Z-Packs Vertis, not sure how to say it, rain pants that I bought on the JMT in 2023. I hated those rain pants. They started falling apart the very first time that I wore them, and moving onward from there, every single time I wore them, they would get new holes in them. The seams were completely splitting apart. I was having to tie them together at my ankles. They were just pieces of crap, to be frank. So going into Washington, I knew that I could be in for some heavy and cold rains. And so I was like, I can't bring these into Washington. They're going to drive me crazy. So I switched out for a pair of Montbell rain pants. And these are I'm trying to remember exactly what they're called. old, and I can't remember, but they're the rain pants that weigh 4 ounces. I actually have a full review of these rain pants coming, so stay tuned for that. But sorry, in this moment, I think they're called the Dry Tech rain pants. Dry Tech ultralight rain pants. That's what they are. Okay, anyway, so I switched out for these, and these were only 1 ounce heavier than my Z-Packs ones, but a lot more durable. I wore these a ton in Washington. I was crawling over downed trees in them, and they held up really well. They still don't have any holes in them after all of Washington and then my section hike of the long trail. And they're really comfy, and they dry really quickly, and they keep rain out pretty well. So I definitely recommend these ones, but I definitely do not recommend the Z-Packs ones. Please don't waste your money on those. They will fall apart immediately. But yeah, these Montbell ones, they're expensive, but if you're looking to save weight and you're willing to spend the money on it, I do recommend these. Raincoat. I had a Montbell Precip raincoat. I have mixed feelings about this. I don't really think it's a great raincoat. It's a fine wind layer. I find it to be very comfortable. It's fairly lightweight, not like the Montbell rain pants. I think this weighs like 9 ounces or something. But it's fine in light or moderate rain, but you get caught in a heavy rainstorm, this thing gets soaked through. You get soaked through. It doesn't dry quickly. I think there are probably better rain jackets out there. I don't know what they are. I haven't found a rain jacket yet that I'm thrilled with, but I am now curious about the Montbell rain jackets because I like those pants so much. But if you have a rain jacket that you love and you think works really well and it's lightweight, bonus points if it comes in bright fun colors, drop that into the comments because, yeah, I don't think this Marmot Precip one is anything special. Next up, I always like bringing a sleeping bag liner. So having a down sleeping bag, I don't want to have to wash it if I don't have to. And so having a sleeping bag liner really helps to not have to wash it as often. It also adds a little bit of warmth. I'm a cold sleeper, so that's really helpful for me. So I have a Sea to Summit Silk Blend sleeping bag liner. I brought one that I had had for years, and it completely shredded in the desert on the PCT. So I did have to buy a new one. But the new one has lasted really well. I just find it's pretty lightweight, it's really comfy, and it protects my sleeping bag, which is really the point. So definitely a big fan of this, would recommend it. Next up, my Torrid booties from Enlightened Equipment. These are synthetic, they're not down, but they're basically down booties. And I bought these to keep my feet toasty, and this is probably my favorite piece of gear, honestly. They're super lightweight, like they feel like clouds. They're incredibly comfortable to wear. They don't make your toes feel constricted or anything. And you get to pick out your colors. So I was sad they didn't have pink. I really wanted hot pink, which Enlightened Equipment used to have, but they didn't have it when I bought these. So I bought these for my Nepal trip in 2024. Anyway, so I got that color on the outside, this color on the inside, and I think they're super cute and fun, and I just love them. When I got to Washington on the PCT and the nights were cold enough again to put these on, I was thrilled. I was like, yay, I get to wear my Torrid booties. That's so exciting. Yeah, I just super love them. Next up, because my pack isn't waterproof, I used dry bags, and the dry bags that I used were from Z-Packs. I've been using these dry bags for a few years now. They're incredibly light. They're under an ounce for each bag, so it doesn't feel like you're adding unnecessary weight. But these are just not very durable. I didn't feel like I was very rough on them, and I got new bags for this trip. I think one of my bags was like a year old, but I hadn't used it very much. And I ended up having to get one new bag, and now I still need to get like 2 more new bags because they just don't last. Unfortunately, the seams start coming apart and the fabric starts spider webbing, and then suddenly they're not waterproof anymore and you don't know. So the one that I had for my sleeping bag, I discovered in a big rainstorm was not waterproof anymore, and it got my sleeping bag wet. So that was not super ideal, especially because your sleeping bag is really a safety item and you need to keep it not getting wet. So I was pretty disappointed. I mean, when these things are new, they work great. but they're just not very durable and they don't last very long. So you just kind of need to be aware of that if you're going to get these dry bags. Next up, my food bag system. So I started in the desert with just a Z-Packs Dyneema food bag. It worked pretty well, but again, it started falling apart pretty soon. In the Sierra, you have to have a bear can. So this is the Barricade Weekender bear can. I've had this for a few years as well. I bought it for the JMT a couple years ago. This is carbon fiber. It's probably the lightest bear can out there that you can get that fits this much food. This will fit like 6 days of food, although I squeezed 9 days of food in it for the JMT, but I got very hungry. But anyway, it fits about 6 days of food. It's, I think, about 2 pounds, maybe a little less. It works very well. I really like it. I hate carrying a bear can because they're bulky and they're heavy, but this isn't, it doesn't really add a lot of weight, which is incredible. So I don't know, as far as bear cans go, I'm a fan, but it is pretty pricey. So most people don't have these, but I bought this as a special treat to myself before the JMT. It was like my birthday gift to myself. And I splurged on it because I just know how much I hate carrying a bear can. And so this helps me to not hate carrying it. So really like it, but obviously there are a lot of way cheaper options on the market. And this is not really that much lighter than some of those cheaper options. It just was enough to make it worth it for me. But I think probably for most people, it won't be worth it. But if you're really desperate to save weight, like you're going to hike the JMT or the High Sierra, it might be worth it to you. You can also rent bear cans in some of the gear shops at Kennedy Meadows, I think. So look into that. I switched after I got out of the High Sierra and a bear can wasn't required anymore. I switched to an Ursack because in some places in Washington, you can either have a bear can or an Ursack. And this is, again, another thing I already owned. It's not like I bought all of these new food containers before I went. The Ursack is what I usually use in Colorado. But anyway, so sometimes you can use an Ursack or a bear can, and this is obviously lighter. This is a bear-proof sack. And normally I really like this thing, but there were a lot of mice in Washington. Never had any issues with mice the entire trail until I got to Washington. Suddenly had a lot of issues with mice. And I think I would have been better off, honestly, just keeping my bear can for the whole rest of the trip. Especially because by the time I got out of the Sierra, I was used to carrying the bear can. I was used to packing the bear can. So if I had just held on to it, it wouldn't have been a big deal. But I wanted to save a little bit of weight, so I got my Ursack. And it just truthfully wasn't worth it. I was being terrorized by mice. Like, I'd put this in a tree and the mice would be running all over it and trying to get into it. And I actually had mice chew into my tent when I didn't even have anything in there. I don't know. I just feel like it would have been better and better protected and more peace of mind to just have the bear can, but whatever. I do really like the Ursack though. I love having an Ursack. I use it all the time. Just specifically for Washington, like those mice are crazy, man. And I think I would have been less stressed. They didn't get into my Ursack. It's not like they got into my Ursack, but I just think I would have been less stressed about the mice if I had still had my bear can. All right, next up, my puffy jacket. This is not actually down, it's synthetic. This is the Patagonia Micro Puff. This is something I've also been using for a few years now. I have this in 2 different colors. I love it so much. Huge fan of this jacket. It's really lightweight. It's like 8 or 9 ounces for this jacket. And I like that it's synthetic, not just for the ethical reasons, but also because if a synthetic jacket gets wet, it's going to hold the warmth. Whereas if down does, it's not going to hold the warmth. So I just think because you're wearing this outside, it's better to have synthetic. There were a few nights in the desert where I was wishing I had a warmer jacket. This is not as warm as some of the down jackets for sure. But for most of the PCT, I found the PCT to be like hot. I did have some cold nights in the desert though, and a couple of cold nights in the High Sierra, but most of the time it was hot on the PCT, so it was not an issue. So yeah, big fan of this jacket. Okay, let's talk about my feet. These are Injinji sock liners. They are the ones with the toe socks. I didn't start out with these. I started out with just normal sock-shaped silk liners from REI, which is usually what I wear. I don't usually deal with blisters. But again, the California dust caused blister problems because the California dust gets into everything and causes so many problems. There's so much of it. Anyway, I was dealing with blisters between my toes, so I switched to these Injinji toe socks. And they fixed it right up. They fixed the problem completely. So I'm a big fan of these. They are not super durable. They do get holes in them pretty easily, but you know, you gotta replace them. It is what it is. They protect the toes, so I think they're worth it. So if you're dealing with issues with blisters between your toes, this is possibly your solution. Honestly, it completely fixed the problem for me. As far as socks go, I like the Darn Tough socks. They're a wool blend sock, I think, and they have a lifetime warranty. So I went through a few pairs of these. They did get holes in them. It's kind of funny because I never really got holes in my socks on the AT, and I was wearing Darn Toughs, but again, the California dust just gets into everything, and I'd get holes in my socks. So anyway, they replace them for you. Some gear shops that carry Darn Toughs will replace them for you for free, or you can send them into Darn Tough and get a free new pair of socks. So this color I didn't have on the PCT. These are my free replacements that I got post PCT. But yeah, big fan of the Darn Tough socks. I think they're really comfy. I think they really help in preventing blisters. And they're fine to walk in when they're wet. You know, like I was walking through a bunch of creeks and rivers in the High Sierra, getting my feet wet. I wasn't getting blisters. I was only getting those darn blisters when I was in that dust. Anyway, okay, shoes. These are actually my last pair of shoes from the PCT. I wore the Oboz Katabatic Winds. They are specifically made, they say, for fast packing. So fast backpacking, and I had absolutely no foot issues on the entire PCT. I watched tons of other people with different shoes having Achilles issues or foot issues or whatever. I had 0 issues. I've been wearing Oboz since the AT. I'm a huge fan. They're not one of the trendier shoes to wear, but that's a brand I really love. I find they really work well for my feet. And here's a tip for you. I'm not saying Oboz are the magic shoe for you. I think they are the magic shoe for me. But make sure you're trying out your shoes with a backpack before you go out on any long trail. Because I saw so many people with foot issues, and I really genuinely think they just had the wrong shoes for their feet. And a lot of people would be like, well, I've been wearing these shoes for years, but they would just be trail running in them, or they'd be day hiking. They wouldn't have a backpack on, which changes the way you're walking. So make sure that you're getting out and testing your shoes ahead of time. Okay. But yeah, love these shoes. Work great for me. If you're going through the High Sierra when there's snow, you are gonna need micro spikes, maybe even crampons if you're really early in the season, but most people are just gonna need micro spikes. These are the Catula micro spikes. I've been using these in Colorado for years. This is my 2nd or 3rd pair. They're amazing. They really help stabilize you on icy, slippery conditions. I'm a huge fan of these. They're not the lightest. I think these weigh like a pound together, but obviously safety first, totally worth it. Love these things. Big fan. You also are probably going to need an ice axe, and also, side note, learn to use it before you go into the ice and snow with it, or at least do your best. I got the Petzl Lighter Aid. This is really lightweight. It's short, but I'm also short, so I didn't really have to use this much. I used it on a couple of the steeper, more slippery passes, but when I went through, the snow was generally pretty soft, so I don't know how much this was really going to do if I started falling down the mountain, but again, like, it's better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it, and this worked really well. I just, it's really lightweight, and I think does the job. I still have it wrapped up from sending it back in Yosemite, and I'm still going to be traveling with it, so I just kept it like that, but obviously, normally it just has a pick on the end of it. Also, don't forget to buy, you might have to buy a leash for it separately, so make sure you don't forget to do that too. I just got this one from Petzl as well. I am a big fan of having camp shoes. I will never go without camp shoes if I can help it. I went onto the trail with a different pair of these, same shoes, different pair. These are the Tiva Original sandals. And the first pair that I brought, I just forgot didn't have any treads on the end anymore because I hadn't used them since like the prior summer, but that was my bad. So then I got these in big pair, I think. They lasted really well. There are obviously lighter weight camp shoes on the market than these, but I find that I really need to treat those tootsies after they've been walking all day long. And when I go into towns, I want to have shoes with a little cushion on them. So I like these because they're really comfy on my feet and offer a fair amount of support. These are a little roughed up because I ran into someone on the PCT who lost their shoes down a river and they didn't have any camp shoes and we were in the middle of freaking nowhere. So I lent her these shoes. I didn't even know her. But I lent her these shoes because she literally had no shoes. So that's also a reason to bring camp shoes. You never know what's going to happen and you need shoes. So anyway, I really like these, would buy these again. But I would be curious if you have camp shoes and you really like them, what are they? But if they're super thin ones, those aren't going to work for me. So don't tell me if they're super thin. I don't need to know. Okay, next up is the Deuce of Spades trowel. This is incredibly lightweight. Use it to dig yourself a hole. I've had this for years. It's held up really well. It hasn't snapped. Digs fine. Recommend. Next up, my Garmin InReach Mini. So this is a satellite communication device and it allows you to communicate with the outside world if you're in an area with no cell phone service, which happens fairly often on the PCT and sometimes for a week or two. So it's nice to be able to contact people outside. This is the original version, like number 1. And everyone else seemed to have the newer version because I've had this for a few years. They had number 2. This older one is kind of a pain because in order to communicate with people like device to device, you have to put in your Garmin email address in a specific way. It's not super user-friendly. But the 2, if you have someone's phone number in your phone, you're like automatically linked through the devices because you download an app and it's a different app for the old one versus the new one. Anyway, so I recommend getting one of these devices. It doesn't have to be Garmin. I do like this one, but I do have to pay a monthly fee in order to use it. And then if I send more text messages beyond that or get more weather forecasts or get more tracking points, because this also will track your location, then you end up having to pay extra. So there are other ones out there, but I do like this. And I would probably get a Garmin again, but again, get the latest version because it's always getting better, right? For my kitchen supplies, I had an MSR titanium pot, super lightweight, worked really well, held up really well. I've had this for years. This cup is still left over from the AT. I've been using it that long. I like to have a coffee every morning, and so I like to have a separate pot and a separate cup. A lot of people don't, but that's just my preference. I also have a titanium long-handled spork. That's also from the AT. I don't know where it is. It's around here somewhere. That also worked really well, and I use the MSR Pocket Rocket. I think this is the number 2 version, and this held up really well, does the job, really small and easy to use. I don't recommend a jet boil, which I know a lot of people use because I've seen those things explode and almost start a forest fire in the wilderness, but I haven't seen that with these. Side note, don't cook in your vestibule. I know you'll be tempted, but you could start yourself on fire, so please don't do that. Okay. As far as my water filter goes, I have the Sawyer Squeeze. Been using this for years now. I've looked into trying out other brands, but they just seem to be not as effective as the Sawyer Squeeze. And gotta keep yourself safe and healthy on the trail. So that's why I keep going back to this one. I did go through 2 of these on the PCT because my first one, I was back flushing it in every single town, which is what you gotta do to kind of clean out the gunk. And still by Oregon, it was filtering at a snail's pace. It was driving me crazy. So Pickles and I decided to treat ourselves, I think in Bend, and buy new filters. And we were so happy that we did. But yeah, I think these work really well. But at a certain point, they do start getting really clogged up. And there's not a whole lot you can do. You know, soak them in vinegar, water, and whatever. But it doesn't really do that much. So on a long trail like the PCT, just kind of expect and budget for the fact that you might want to treat yourself and get a new filter at some point. And I think this is the last item I have to review. No, wait, I have one more. Okay. So I bought these gaiters from Etsy. I think the shop was called Stitch Magic or something like that. This was their very last pair of this print. I absolutely love the print. I wish I could buy more, but alas, I cannot. Anyway, these gaiters are used to just keep junk out of your shoes and help prevent blisters that way. I love having a pair of gaiters if I'm off backpacking and it keeps the dust out of your shoes, or it keeps pine needles out of your shoes, or it helps, you know. So I do recommend getting a pair of these. A really common brand is Dirty Girl, but you know, you can find them other places like Etsy. These completely started falling apart. They got huge holes in them. My mom sewed them back up for me, but they're still kind of a little funny now. But yeah, overall, I do definitely recommend getting a pair of gaiters, and that is why. Okay, the last item is my Kula cloth. This is a technical P-rag. And I really like these because they save you on toilet paper, and they also, they're like smell resistant and antimicrobial and all that kind of good stuff for hygiene, and they come in really fun prints. But the one I specifically brought to the PCT, I have since thrown away because it just wasn't keeping things as smell proof as I would like anymore by the end of the trail, but it lasted really well. And yeah, I'm a big fan of these. I think they cut down on trash in the wilderness that people tend to leave behind. Please don't do that. And no matter what Backpacker Magazine says, I think they're worth it and awesome. Okay, and that is all the gear that I have to review today. If I missed anything that you're curious about, please let me know. And again, if you want to look up this gear, I have links to all of it down in the show notes. All right, stay tuned for more PCT videos coming soon, and very soon I will have a full review on those rain pants, so watch out for that as well. Thanks for being here. Thanks for listening, everybody. I hope that was helpful. I will talk to you later, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. Okay, bye-bye.